Hey everyone, this is Adarsh, and today we are joined by one of the very recent Grinnell alumni, Halle. She currently works at Microsoft, and I would give the stage to Halle to take it off and give a very quick intro on what she's working on right now and explain us to how a day-to-day job looks like.
Okay, that's a lot to cover. Hi, thanks for having me. Uh, as Adarsh said, work at Microsoft. I work in a field or area called edge computing, and that's not like the browser edge. It's kind of like the edge of a network. And the idea in this broad space is to think about how kind of like reverse the model of how cloud computing works. So imagine normally with cloud computing, you might think of having your photos taken on your phone uploaded to the cloud, or having some type of compute functionality running in the cloud to do some data processing or something like that. But it's very centralized. And the idea behind edge, computing or edge solutions is to move that processing, that storage, that power out towards the edge of a network. So think about it as, hey, rather than sending your data or your having your function run in a data center in Des Moines, which there is one, having your job run at a more local site with servers that are on premise. So that's the big area that I work in. If I developed every single solution that operated in that area, I would be a very insane software developer. So my role specifically is much, much, much more narrow than that huge space, which, I could talk forever about how many different applications there are in that space. And so I'll stop
Yeah,
myself there. Uh,
that's
but
pretty
is that
exciting.
clear enough?
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. The one follow up that I would have on that is like, do you think just I've never worked in that space and I've never like learned about it. So I'm assuming that a lot of speakers on this podcast would be like they are humanities majors. There are different majors who are not exactly interested in computer science. But one thing I could get is like that will first make things faster because the data centers are closely located to where you're accessing your data from.
You're
And
you're doing my job for me. Yeah. So I guess the question that I'm hearing you ask is, why would you ever want to put something on the edge? We
yeah,
sound like some crazy hype train. Uh, so why would you want to do that? And you just brought up this really great point of you're reducing the latency, which is
mhm,
what would make something faster. So rather than having to have your request make that round trip to a data center. In your case, in Grinnell specifically, it's not a very long trip, but for
yeah,
some people, it is a quite long haul, and it adds a lot of time when you're making request after request after request. So that's
makes
one of
sense.
the reasons.
Mhm.
I could be interviewing you. Do you have any other ideas about why we would want?
Why would That's an interesting question. First, definitely the speed. I assume. Secondly, I would say not an exact pros, but I think it would add a lot of maintenance cost for the company, won't it? Like,
Yeah, that'd
would
be a
there be small?
downside. Yes,
There would
you
be a
have
downside.
to have these physical devices on your on your premise. You
Yeah.
There's a lot of, so in the scope of this space, right? There's
Hmm.
something that might look like a stack of servers in on your site, like you have your own mini data center that's close to you.
Yeah.
That's expensive to maintain. You have to make sure it's updated. You have to make sure that everything's plugged into the right place. You have to have the right power. You have to have a variety of things, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
prerequisites, but you also have also considered in edge computing is this idea of IoT or Internet of Things, right? All these
Hmm.
small devices that are, you know, still have to be maintained. You want to be receiving analytics from them.
Yeah.
You want to be, and the problem there is you've got a bunch of small devices that you have to manage, and that's less my expertise, but still in the scope of these edge problems. Um,
Makes sense.
so there's a variety of applications. I don't know how long you want to spend in them, but
Yeah.
I could do this
But
all day.
no, I would just say like one last thing that I think if one server goes down, I think the less number of devices are affected by it, I guess, because there are now more servers. Would that work in that case?
So you're talking about failover, would be the
Hmm.
technical term for that. And the idea there is that, this works for data centers as well, right? Say, for example, that you have some database that's in a data center that's in Des Moines, and someone unplugs the entire data center and everything crashes, right? There are tools that are exist in order to make it so that we crash gracefully. So either you might have a copy of your database that's replicated somewhere else. There might be a way to cache that database in some ways so that you can spin it up in some other data center that's working. So if we think about that in the context of edge, right? Uh, you know, the same principles apply. There are a couple more applications in terms of, maybe you have very strict restrictions about the type of locations that you can create your workloads in, create your applications in. For example, if you're, work in medicine, or you are part of a government, or you are a government, you might have some stricter requirements about confidentiality. And so if one of your sites crashes,
Yeah.
an edge solution might make it, or at least one of the goals of our team, to make it easy to manage all of these non-data center sites, should make it easier for you to have an alternative.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, I mean, I'm really intrigued by this. Is this domain? You can get that from my questions, but um, I'm just curious. Like, how did you know that you want to work in this space?
Yeah, so how did I know I wanted to work in this space? I, like you as a student, did not think that this space really existed. I had had an internship at IBM, which had worked in bare metal compute and billing, and and so I knew that cloud was a place I could work, and I knew that there was a lot of infrastructure problems that were out there that I had no inkling of the specifics of them. In terms of how I'm here now, it wasn't that I went out searching for this particular space. It's that I had the opportunity to join a team that worked in this area, and the people who I talked to on said team were very intelligent and described some of the problems that we just talked about, uh,
Yeah.
just as thought experiments. And I went, you know what? Those are problems I could keep thinking about, and I could and
Mhm.
hope potentially to be paid to think about.
Absolutely. I still have a picture of there's a data center in Des Moines, there's a data center in somewhere, but yeah, it keeps you thinking. That's a nice thing. So how did
Yeah.
the transition look like? Like, what was your role before you joined Microsoft and started working on this technology? What were you doing before that?
Yeah. So I am part of the class of 2020, which means we graduated the year the pandemic hit. So, like any good Grinnellian, I procrastinated looking for a job until the second semester senior year. So I guess you could say my sister did not do so, so maybe she's still a good Grinnellian. But regardless, I procrastinated that. COVID hit, a bunch of companies closed their doors, and I thankfully had a friend who was also a Grinnellian who pointed me at a company that was in the Seattle area that
Hmm.
worked on logistics, and I applied there, and they seemed very nice, and we I wrote basic for an entire year, uh, learning about trucks and barges and food safety and a bunch of other things like that.
Yeah.
uh, so that does not look like the job I have today. So the question is, how did I get to the job I had today from
Yeah,
there?
and how was the transition also like? Because you went that I think for me it's a very unique transition. Like it's 180-degree almost. So what were the connections? What exactly were you working on before that made you thought about like let's look into some other fields maybe?
Yeah. So in this case, I was discovering that I wasn't as motivated by trucks as I could be. That's not to say that the work wasn't rewarding. I would say that the impact of that work was much more tangible than it is at my current job. But I was looking around and I was going, do I want to write BASIC for the rest of my career? Because if I don't, then I should probably try and stop writing BASIC.
Hmm.
And getting a position at Microsoft, that kind of that for me feels like luck, and being prepared at the right moment. And I know that's not something that I think a lot of students like to hear, but I had grown up in the Seattle area. I had had a high school internship with Microsoft. Someone from that high school, scenario remembered me and went, "Oh no, wait, we kind of think we want you around at Microsoft. I'll have you talk to someone in this
Yeah.
edge computing space." So from there, what it was how can I make working on code from before I was born uh,
Hmm.
applicable to a job in a space that is just continuing to expand, and it's a lot of greenfield, right?
Yeah.
Which is a term for open space, unsolved problems, not very solidified market. So how could I do that? And that feels like a very Grinnellian question to me.
Valid. Valid. No, I agree. Exploration is a big part of, at least it's my first year on campus, and I think exploration has been a huge part of being a Grinnell student. I talk to a lot of my friends who are in different universities, and they have a set path that they have to follow for all 4 years if they want to get that degree. But Grinnell allows you for that. You can do anything. You can take an arts class even if you're a CS major. So I think, just to reiterate on that point, you many people think that you went from one career to like different domains, but I would say like Grinnell prepares you kind of for that, and it makes you mentally prepared to be able to do that.
I would say that when I was interviewing, I remember I was interviewing, and this interviewer was doing a wonderful job of repeating back to me what I had told him. And he said, "So you have a lot of experience in legacy systems, and you're applying to a team that has a bunch of features that are have not been written yet." And I went,
Yeah,
"Yes," because that's all you can say.
yeah,
It, and I would say that the ability, or that the same thing that might allow you to go, "Hey, I might not have ever hosted a podcast before, but here I am hosting a podcast at Grinnell," is
yeah,
that a similar mentality.
yeah, yeah. I personally like that. I mean, I think it's a superpower that if you are ready to do like anything that you are even not prepared for in the past, like that's that's a nice thing to have. Um, but just curious on that, like, what are classes and how was your Grinnell experience like? I know you were a COVID batch, but I think you are also very recent alumni, so you know most of the structure that's available on campus right now. So
Yeah. What was my time at Grinnell like? Well, you say I'm recent, but I may have this joke that I'm about to graduate from being a recent grad. It's almost been 4 years. Not to date myself, but time at Grinnell, I played soccer. I
mhm,
was a computer science SEPC. I took a variety of classes. I pretended I wanted to be an English major for the first couple of years, but didn't take those classes, and regret that a little bit. But I was a computer science major, pretty
mhm,
standard for working at Microsoft. Maybe not very imaginative. Um,
mhm,
I would note that I think the standout piece of my time at Grinnell, or the standout parts, were that I would try and focus essentially where I was when I played soccer. And when I was at soccer, I was at soccer. And when I was
mhm,
doing SCPC work, I was doing SCPC work. And when I did summer map, and then
mhm.
did that summer map again with maybe an additional component, uh, I was very much into, in this case, I was a camp counselor for a study on self efficacy in computing. So I was totally counselored up. I don't know, headband and all goofy songs, etc. And Grinnell really allows you to do that, and I would say that that characterized a lot of my time there.
I think what you just said, like having been able to just focus on one thing at a time, is also amazing, because there's like for me at least, I think when I'm working on something else, I think about other things as well, so
Yeah.
which reduces your focus on what thing you're working on right now.
Well, that's not to say that. So, as a student, when you're studying and you're a first year, so maybe you're taking a math track, maybe you're doing calc, maybe you've taken a computer science course before. I remember we talked about that. You've got your tutorial.
Yeah.
I think the connections between classes are also a
Hmm.
space for insane growth. I don't know, value,
Hmm.
etc. So don't I wouldn't say that when I'm studying linear algebra
Hmm.
that I'm not also bringing in some random learning from image processing in my studio art class, right? Uh,
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
but I
That's really.
guess the main comment I'm trying to suggest is that I really tried to be exceedingly present, uh,
Hmm.
and that's really hard, and I wasn't always able to do it. Especially, my sense is that you're just back from spring break, and it is especially hard then.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Especially when your spring break is 2 weeks and you are like really happy when you talk to other students and they're like, you get a 2 weeks spring break, we get 3 days, 4 days. And we're like, okay, we get 2 weeks spring breaks and that's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah,
So,
I miss it.
no. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to be as present as I could. Like in the spring break, I was like, we gotta enjoy this time. But
Yeah.
um, moving on from that, I was gonna ask you like, you visited campus very recently, right? And for people who don't know, uh, there was a recent alumni a meetup or Microsoft meetup that happens on campus. You can always check out CLS websites, or it's all usually on Handshake as well. So uh, if you are hearing this and you don't know how to get those things, go to career.grinnell.edu or go to Handshake. Those are the best resources. But I'm curious, like when you visited campus, how did you feel? Like, did you feel it was way different than what it has been, or like, do you feel it's the same?
Me and my sister, also class of 2020, also
Mm-hmm.
computer science major, also works at Microsoft. Uh, came and part of that event was a talk from other much more illustrious Microsoft Grinnell alumni than I. And
Mm-hmm.
another part of that was, I think, a lunch where I talked to students. And if anything, uh, I the thing that I got out of it was that all of you looked much more sane than I remember feeling as a student. So it's like, wow, okay, like you look like you get sleep and all of these other things. That was first impression. But other than that, um, I would say that being back on campus felt very comfortable and strangely so. And the weird conversations I had with students and people I had never met before felt completely normal. I wouldn't say it was coming home, but it didn't take me much less than a breath to kind of slide back into that space.
Yeah. That's interesting because a lot of people, when at least for the students who when they are on campus, they always think that they want to move out from the town because it's very small. They are thinking like we should go to nearby cities, but at the same time, after you have been out for a while, you feel like, "Yeah, let's go back to Grenada. It's comfortable there as well too."
Yeah,
So
I mean, I kind of done the reverse. I've brought Grinnell to me.
mhm,
So by virtue of working in tech and
mhm,
living in a tech hub, a bunch of my computer science friends have started moving to where I'm at in Seattle, and so I've kind of tried to do that.
bring as many friends. Yeah, that's valid. I think that's perfect. And I do remember, like, I was there on the table as well during the lunch while we were having it. So I remember a lot of conversations from that lunch as well. And there's actually one question I had um, from that lunch, that a lot of people were asking you about what to add in a resume, how to get this internship, or all those standard questions. I want to ask to you, like, um, of all the interactions you have had with students, what is something that they are not prioritizing on or they are not focusing on enough?
Okay, I my head breaks that into two questions because there's what are they not prioritizing enough to get a career
Yeah, yeah,
is part of the question, and then
that's
and
a
then
valid
there's
question.
also the bigger, broader question. So let's start on the career
Career one,
portion.
yeah.
Uh, so what I would note is I'm going to make a lot of broad assumptions. I'm going to note that you spend a lot of time working on your classes or doing your student job or hanging out with your friends, and all of those you must do. Like, please prioritize those. um, what I would note is that if you have, say, for example, 30 minutes, an hour of time, and you are curious about something, uh, reach out to an alum that's related to it. Reach out to another friend of yours about it. Make sounds awful. Make time to pursue your curiosities, because you have so much more leeway as a student, and I have a lot of leeway as a recent grad to try on all of these new or unfamiliar topics, um, or hats, or ideas, projects. I can spend 2 weeks learning how to I ran a book club last week, or 3 weeks learning how to pick up climbing, and then continuing on after that, or whatever, right? So make sure that you're acting on those curiosities, because at this point in time they can be life changing, and the college slash the alumni have a lot of resources they can chuck at you. Um,
True.
so I'd prioritize that. Um, in terms of you brought up resumes, is there a specific question you have in terms of that space? Because I know it's an anxiety inducing space,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
No, I just when I was on that table, a lot of people were asking me questions about resumes, and I was like, interesting, because I think there were more important questions that could be asked. Personally,
okay.
I mean that's just a personal thing, but yeah, I think a lot of people just keep focusing on resumes, standard things that you can Google and get an answer of, and of course they want to ask you because they want to know your personal opinion. But I was like, there might be something missing in this conversation that should be more, that they should be asking like more questions, or like better
I
questions
see.
specific.
So I'm hearing two questions there too. I'm hearing, uh, do I have an opinion about resumes that your general audience wants to hear? Short answer, uh, not really. I'm sorry. Longer answer. What question did I want to be asked by students when I was there back in September?
Sorry, I
Like,
didn't.
I'm trying to parse your question. Like,
No,
you're
there's no question on the resume.
okay. Okay.
There's
Well,
no.
no. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is, uh, do I believe that students were wasting my expertise, which it's still hard to believe I have some, uh, in my presence when they're asking these questions that they can Google. And
Yeah.
I've talked to a variety of alumni about this particular question, because we're it's hard to find time, but I'm making time to talk to alumni, to say, how would you like to be talked to? What would you like to do to reach back to
Exactly.
students?
Yeah.
Um, what do you think that you have to share that's important? And in my case, I just told you a lot about edge computing. If you're at all interested in any of that, maybe you look into it, and maybe you go, "Oh, that looks shiny and cool," and maybe you get into it and you ask me more questions, or maybe the story of, "Hey, uh, you know, Grinnell is valuable in my career because it allowed me to say that I am qualified to write new shiny tools, even though I just spent a year writing basic," right? Maybe that's something that you take with you, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but you won't know upon meeting an alum or meeting anyone what interesting piece of information they're going to tell you. And so, what questions do you ask to ferret that out, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and as an interviewer, I'm kind of looking to you as the expert here. I'm like, what questions do you ask to an alum or to a guest,
Yeah.
to get what you're most interested in back?
I mean, for me, I as a podcaster, I don't just like get a say of what questions I want to ask. I want to make sure that my audience also. So it's not always that I want to ask those questions. Sometimes I actually don't, but I have to because they need to have a broader context. But if it was personal, if I was meeting an alumni for the first time, I would classify a question as a good question if it makes them think about it. um, it shouldn't be something that they should be introspecting about that question. That's a good question. I think that's an insightful question.
because
I think
then
that brings out the most value
because then you're engaging with them on
because both
a
parties
more
get to take
personal.
something out of. Yeah,
Yeah.
that way it's a two-way street. I feel like both sides get to know something more about themselves or about their life in general.
Yeah. See, I'm learning from you now. You're just gonna steal that and take it with me.
Absolutely, absolutely. But on that part, I just wanted to iterate that you just mentioned that people should be reaching out to alumni more and more. To all the listeners who are listening to this, one great resource is LinkedIn. When you go to Grinnell College page, there is a filter that you can apply a specific which major, which city, which year they graduated, and you can have like a you can find them on LinkedIn. You can connect with them. You can send them a note on all those things. So you're not limited by resources on that end. There are many alumni database like on LinkedIn. So just hit those search buttons and you will find, I think, a decent leads on that part. But one more thing, while we are on this alumni reach out part, although alumni I have talked to, they are very interested in helping their upcoming students. But at the same time, uh, I'm interested in what it feels like to be on the other side. Are you do you get I know, I mean, I think everybody gets excited when they receive an email from their college student and they want to talk to them, but what are they expecting when they are getting in that call, and how could students actually improve that quality of that call?
Um, well, so it depends on whether or not you think of an alum as a resource, like you're mining us for knowledge that you aren't getting from the school itself or from your current experiences, or whether you are looking for someone who knows what you've gone through
Hmm.
and can you offer you a sympathetic ear or maybe a little bit of advice if you're looking for a mentor or you're looking for insight into something, right? There's so many different reasons to reach out to an alum. Um,
Hmm.
and if you don't know why you're reaching out to an alum, at least my opinion would be that you say, "Hi, I want to talk to an alum. I don't know how. What do you think I should do?" Because once again, like uh,
Yeah,
my time is
yeah, yeah,
valuable, but if I agree
absolutely,
to meet with you,
absolutely.
hopefully
Hmm.
the both of us believe we're going to get something out of it, and so working together to make sure that happens. It's a collaborative thing. The alum comes to the meeting with
Yeah.
an expectation, so does the student, and like how you from the get-go try and ensure that you're collaborating on that.
That's pretty good advice. I mean, it depends on what intention you are going on the call with. So yeah, totally on the same page with you. Um, one more thing that
Wait, what you said made me think of if you are reaching out to an alum just because I told you to, or
mhm,
someone told you to, uh,
mhm, that's
that
usually
sometimes
not
makes for some shallower interactions. So
absolutely
if you can find an alum that you are excited to talk to,
talk to.
and if you want to talk to an alum but you don't know why or how you would do that, I believe
Yeah.
that there's CLS programs for that as well. Um,
Hmm.
and I bet someone could probably write an app that's like a roulette style. Send this person a LinkedIn message. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think curiosity here or the interest here is much more important than even you knowing how to reach out to, because even if you don't know how to reach out to or talk to a person, the alumni basically, I think if you have enough interest or curiosity, that conversation usually just ends up, I think, fine. Yeah,
yeah,
it's, everybody is. I think it will be fine with that. So, yeah,
yeah,
just don't reach out because you heard us speaking about it. Just look up, see who actually interests you, and then reach out to them. But yeah, that's a great advice. And one thing that I wanted to ask you is like, a lot of people are reaching out to alumni right now for because a lot of graduating class. It's a tough time in both tech space and in overall space in general. But what advice would you have for those students? What should be they doing right now, both in tech or I would say overall, to get a better job or better opportunity once they graduate?
Okay, that's a hard question. So your implication here is that reaching out to an alum, because it came from a networking question, right,
Yeah,
will help you get a job.
it could. I mean,
It could.
it could.
Yes, that's a fair correction, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, if you reach out to an alum and your message starts off with "Hi, do you have a job for me?" I will respond to you out of obligation. If you reach out to me
Yeah.
or another alum likely with a question about what their work is like,
Yeah.
what they think about how Grinnell applied to it, or on a more personal level,
Hmm.
they might not think about applying you for a job. So you have this really fine line to walk, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, what my suggestion would be at the moment is to look a little more broadly than you
Hmm.
would imagine a role for yourself, um, and to give cut yourself some slack and know that you might not get your dream job as your first job out of school. Um,
Yeah.
Coming from actually my that was my dream job. It was perfect for that point in my life, but
Yeah.
I didn't know it when I was saying I would work there, right? Um, so cut yourself slack there. Uh, the other thing I would note, you mentioned earlier using the CLS, um, and my understanding from having talked to them is that not enough students use them. So, uh,
That's
uh,
good.
side eye moment. Uh, like, what can
Yeah.
I do to get a job? There's a center there for you that is
Yeah.
trying to help you do that. So please use it. Um, there's donations that go towards that.
Yeah.
Please make use of them.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's an entire building named after just careers.
If you, I would note that whatever works best for you. So if you
Yeah.
go to the CLS and you find that it makes you less willing to invest time in thinking about your career, and you need that to be some type of solo pilgrimage, off into the woods, do that. But know that this is a big problem to solve, and it really helps sometimes to have a helping hand, even if it's a friend, even especially if it's an expert in the field. The closest one you have is
Yeah.
has an entire building named after it, so maybe use that one.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a very fair correction to be honest. Like, I don't, I know a lot of my friends who think doing something else would be more helpful for them. Like, even in just CLS, like there are multiple things that they offer, not just appointments for resumes and stuff. So there are multiple services that you could look into. So and someone might find one better than the other. So it's always up to a personal opinion on where do you want to. But it's just that the end line goal is there are many resources that you could reach out to on campus. So
Yeah.
please do.
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a magic website that has a BuzzFeed quiz inside of it linked that will tell you where you can find the perfect job out of school. Um, but you, but
That's a startup idea.
uh,
I mean,
it sounds like the tests they used to give my parents when they were in high school, and they told you everyone they were going to be a park ranger because they like nature. Like, like, it's something you might want to try and figure out for yourself. And if you guess and you take a job that you don't like right out of school, know that your career is way longer than you think it is. I'm
yeah,
still the youngest person
mhm,
in most rooms. So
yeah,
yeah.
that's amazing. I mean, that brings that gave me another question, which is slightly off track, but I want to still ask. You said you are one of the youngest person in that room, right? And I know, like, I want to know what are the perks of that. I know there are a lot of perks and there are a lot of cons of that as well. But let's stick to that for a second. Like, when you are young, like, as a child, I wanted to grow up faster, and as like a little grown up, like as compared to my third or fourth grade, I don't want to grow up faster. I want to be the younger person because I want to be able to make mistakes, and still be like get
And
away
not
with
be
it
judged by it.
and not be
Yeah.
judged for it. So,
Yeah.
what is it for you? What do you think?
What is it like to be the younger person in the room? Well, I'm not necessarily a quiet younger person, so that
Mm-hmm.
colors my feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that I'm asking every single question that pops into my brain, but I am asking a fair number of dumb questions, and uh, in air quotes, dumb. Uh, that's a helpful thing because I know that other people want to know the answers to those. That's like something you hear all the time as a student.
Yeah.
Another perk I would say of being quote unquote young is that people expect me to have a lot of energy,
Mm-hmm.
which means they're willing to hand me things they might not hand me otherwise. like you're sure you can just run a little bit more and
Yeah.
try to pick up this new technology. I mean, it's part of the reason why my jump from the first company I worked at to Microsoft was possible, is because they assumed that there wasn't that much in my head for them to reteach me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so note that that's a benefit of being unformed. like um
Yeah.
so those are, I would say, that the main perks. I would also
Mm.
say that when you succeed or you excel beyond your means, I personally like to set the bar low and surpass it rather
Mm-hmm.
than, uh,
I do.
which,
I do
if
get
my
that.
manager listens to this, is might not totally agree with, but um, what I'd say is, set the bar at a fair space, and as someone who's younger, maybe that naturally is a little bit lower. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
excelling, it's much more noticeable too. So you get
Valid.
pats on the back for that way
Valid.
easier.
No, absolutely valid. I agree. I personally, I think there are fair amount of perks of if you are a young person and if you are like working in a startup or a company. I think you get a lot of room for experiments as well. You get a lot of experience without being experienced, because everybody in the room is more experienced than you. So whatever they are saying, it's a lesson for you at the same time. So just saying that. But I think that's great. And one thing I had on that is um, there are cons of that as well. So, do you think there are any cons? Have you personally experienced any cons for that?
There's a couple prejudices about being young. Well, first of all, you might note that your organizational memory is much shorter than most people's, and your experience in different companies is much smaller too. So when certain actions are happening at the company and you're wondering, why did this feature get put out at this time, or
Yeah.
uh, why did I just see these two people talking to each other, you might be not in the know. And so I've had some of the older team members of mine and I sync up and me being like, am I reading this right? Is this the organizational reason for why my experience here is this?
Yeah.
Um, so I wouldn't say that that's a con, but I would say that there's a language that you have to learn, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're younger, you're not as fluent. Um, I would also note for a con that you're much less likely to get tasked with large, ambiguous, unformed, uh, you know, projects. So, like the invent a new feature or a new way of doing something. You're
Yeah.
generally gonna be spending a lot of time learning tried and true ways to do things, or changing something that someone has already written, and learning from all of that. And I'm quite satisfied with that, but I think that it might feel like you want to grow up faster, and design an entirely new architecture, and that's much more difficult to get those opportunities when you're earlier in your career.
Um, that's interesting because coming from you, I would assume that that's the work environment and that's the structure that is there in tech. Do you think there's what could someone do to overcome that? Like, um, is it something that you can't overcome, because of the procedural or the hierarchy structure, or is it like you can do that if you follow certain steps or something like that?
You sound like some of the early in careers I've talked to at Microsoft now. Uh, how can I get this more glamorous technical opportunity?
I would I would rephrase it in a way.
Okay, please
How
do.
could I work on the biggest problem that my company is facing?
Ooh, well, I would note that the so for example, let me bring this back to the idea of you're a student and
Yeah.
you think that um, you know, let's say quantum computing and problems in that space are cutting edge, they're exciting, that's where you want to build your career, right? You shake
Mm.
your head.
My shaking head doesn't mean yes or no.
Okay,
I mean
I'm just for me that's like, oh, that's a little scary, which but maybe that's me projecting. And I would say that if I spent all of my time trying to work in problems in that domain, um, I would have to prove my expertise in that domain to enter it, right? Um, there's a reason why those larger, more open-ended projects get given to senior engineers. One of the reasons it might be a security reason. So uh, reinventing the wheel is not normally a very secure practice. There's a lot more opportunity for you to implement something in a new way that has another new way of being breached. So having seen more is also and adhering to a more common standard, or at least the most recent security standard, is actually it saves a lot of us a lot of grief. So that might
Yeah.
be a reason. But if you're trying to overcome that entire space, right? I think as an early in career, you need to be really targeted about what exactly you're trying to grow, right? Um, so, for example, if I decide that telemetry is the best thing in the world, which my understanding is a lot of managers would love to hear that, uh, right? I'm like, I want to become a subject matter expert in telemetry. That that I need, that communicating that interest to my manager,
Mm.
setting up for myself opportunities to learn that,
Yeah.
whether that's outside of work and in work. But if you tell your manager, you can collaborate with them on it, right?
Hmm.
Unless it's an entire career switch, which you can also collaborate with them on, but for a much shorter period of time. But I think what my suggestion is, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get here, is that you need to be focused with where you spend your time, because the proportion of time that you have spent on whatever your domain is so much smaller than that of someone who's had years and years and years. And so the fraction of it all, and the emphasis that you place in different areas matters so much more.
I won't say it's a zero sum game, but I would say uh, in this space you have to be prepared enough that someone with maybe like 1,000 hours of experience, or even like 1,000 hours is just number I pulled up, but like way more, like 5 or 10 years more experience than you need to be able to like have an intellectual conversation with them and be
Yeah,
able
I
to
mean,
create something.
let's try and make that a more specific example. So if you're trying, say for example, um, maybe not an example outside of tech would help. Maybe I want to start a restaurant in Grinnell, and I have a friend who was like, "Let's start a boba place in Grinnell," right? Oh, I've never started, I've never run one, right?
Yeah.
But let's say that's the goal, right?
Hmm.
Um, what what do I need to know in order to have a conversation with the people who own the buildings in Grinnell? What I have not made boba before. How frequently do I have to figure out how to make it? Who do I have to talk to who knows how to make it, right? In order to convince someone that they should drink the one that I make, right? Um, all of that. I don't have to have 10 years of experience in making boba,
Hmm.
but I might want to have a, an idea of the problems I need to solve in order to convince someone that they should invest in that opportunity with me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm. That's a valid point. I mean, interesting.
But
I'm just
you're talking about a solution where there's this idea that I want to open a boba shop and someone else also wants to open a boba shop, and you are picking between two people who want to
yeah.
open boba shops, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Right?
You are picking someone who has worked at the restaurant for like last 10 years and someone who is just opening for an experiment. Which one would you
Yes.
choose? Like,
Yeah.
and how would you sell people on that? That's an interesting.
Well, I mean, how would you sell people on that?
I mean, of course, it's a good if the quality definitely matters. Like, could the new person be trusted with my daily drinks? Like, that would be like
It's
the
very
first
important.
thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also curious about that stuff will come when the people will take the first sip. How will you get people to taste it in the first place? Like, um,
Yeah.
second sip is dependent on you. Like someone, I heard this interview and someone said that you have been given this opportunity because of someone, but the second time you will be given a similar opportunity will be because of you. So, um, I mean, how to get people to get that first opportunity is
Yeah. Well, and that
interesting.
starts out too with, do you open a lemonade stand that convinces
Hmm.
people that your boba is
Hmm.
better than other people's boba? Or if I'm go back to the Grinnell example, right? Maybe think
Yeah.
a little bit beyond the boba part. What does Grinnell as a community, what is it looking for in its town? Is it looking
Hmm.
for someone who, maybe they're saying we want someone who is going to stay here for years and years and years. And if you infer that demand or need or desire, right, without
Yeah.
them having to tell you, and you add it to your value proposition, you're showing that you might be thinking about their specific scenario in a way that maybe your competitor
Hmm.
with a broader
Hmm.
set of experience might not be, right?
Yeah. 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 Agree. I mean, that those are two great points to anybody who's listening, and not just who doesn't want to open, but it applies. Boba shop is just an example, but it applies, I think, pretty much everywhere. You can apply the same thing. So that's amazing. Loved it. You just mentioned like if you wanna hop from one career to another, that made me think like, um, what are your next goals? Like because for a lot of people who are on campus and a lot of seniors I talk to, their end goal is to get that job, to get that, and that's valid because that should be their primary focus right now. But when you have that, how does your focus changes, or how does
Yeah.
your goals change?
Yeah. Okay. So my this might feel a little bit pitiful. It might be like a first world problem type deal. Uh, I want to have more faith in myself as a developer.
Hmm.
Um, so how do I set out to do that? Um, does it come from figuring out how I consume news that's technical in a new way? I've got friends that are telling me about algorithms I've never heard of, and I love having those conversations with those friends. But what if I was more in line? Like, what if I gave myself that gift of feeling like I was more informed? The imposter syndrome does not always go away. So that's one.
True.
Um, in that's I think in a work sense. You said career changes. At the moment, I am not planning to jump ship where I'm at. I'm trying to kind of, I guess, squeeze as much as I can out of it. And that, as far as I'm aware, from the start of our conversation, there's a lot there. I
And
feel very thankful for that.
just to rephrase what I said, like not change career as in like
Yeah,
switch
yeah,
jobs or something, but it's more like what are you next learning, or like
hmm,
what are you next excited about? I know, and
yeah,
cloud is like very open space, still a
yes,
greenfield, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I am in the process of doing things outside of work that I'm investing a lot of time in. Um,
Interesting.
so, have a job. Have when your job isn't making you tear your hair out, but is offering you growth. You might get to a point where you can focus on those other things. So signed up for a race,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to read a lot of different books, have too many recommendations, like all of those types of things
Mm-hmm.
can come to the forefront a lot more. I'm very thankful that I have that space. And it doesn't sound exciting, but like if you reach out to me on LinkedIn or in random conversations, I will tell you what book I am currently reading, and it's awesome.
This is. I think that's more interesting than as a first starter conversation. I think that's a more interesting conversation to have, or like just randomly. Like, I think that's much better conversation to have. Like, it would be interesting to hear from alumni if I ever talk like if I ever run into one on the Spencer. It's like, what are you up to this weekend? And they're saying I'm going hiking.
Yeah.
It's a totally different conversation than what are you
Hmm.
working on or stuff like
I
that.
mean,
So
what do you have to do when you don't have homework anymore? Do you make up homework for yourself? Do you, it was just tax season. I did do that this weekend. Like, like what? How do you manage your time, right?
yeah,
And I think that it's hard to remember as a student that once you're done with school, you don't stop trying to grow. It's
hmm,
just that you don't have a transcript anymore to like list off all the things you're doing.
yeah, yeah.
And you might decide to go to grad school and measure your time still in some type of semester or quarter system or by the classes you're taking. And I miss that a little bit, but it's a lot more fluid now.
Yeah, yeah. What do you mean by when you say fluid exactly?
Um, I mean that, for example, I had in mind that I was going to spend this past month, focused on training for a race, trying out some new fitness opportunities, that type of
That's
growth.
amazing.
Sure. And uh, then I found a stack of puzzles on the side of the road, and my roommates and I have dedicated hours to these puzzles. And and the same thing happens in college, right? It's just that outside of school, uh,
Hmm.
the amount of free space you have, unless you're the type of person who books yourself solid, um, it is a little bit wider, right? And so if you are the type of person like me to like pick an obsession for the next little bit, um,
Yeah.
that you have more space for that. Whether it's sewing or whether
Hmm.
it's kickboxing or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
so
No,
that's
I
probably not
completely
the answer
understand.
you were looking for, but
No, no, no.
yeah.
That's exactly the answer I was looking for. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I think just what you just said after being through spring break, literally the spring break ended this Sunday. I think when you have more free time, and if you are not the type of person who books themselves solid, you can think more creatively. Like you think about a lot of things, and they are not usually just time passing. It's just like you can actually apply that to some places and get really good outputs out of it. Like last weekend I was working at a hackathon, and I was looking before that I was looking into my insurance and my taxes and stuff. So basically the app we built on the hackathon was an insurance app.
Mhm.
So it's things connect there. So I would
Yeah.
say in your free time things will connect later on if you don't see them, all right, connecting them right now. But thank you so much for tuning in today, Heli. Like it was amazing talking to you. And any last piece of advice or questions that I haven't covered that you want to add?
I don't really. I guess I would say if it makes you nervous, sometimes that's great. like,
Yeah.
like, so as an engineer right now, I've been given advice to move towards work that scares me. You can say the same in terms of classes or in terms of, I took a fitness class this week where I was a little intimidated, right?
Yeah.
But reminding yourself to do that, and I think college has that built in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this exam is freaking me out, type of thing.
Yeah.
But
College got that covered.
yeah, college has, oh, this social scenario is a little bit intimidating. Yeah, that's whatever. It is, but
Yeah.
know that it's empowering to sometimes choose those scenarios a bit more actively for yourself, uh, and whether it's, I think my senior year before COVID hit, I like did this tour around where I went, there's a bunch of campus jobs I haven't ever worked at. Like, I'll just like do 2 hours at this and an hour of this, and I'll time swim meet, and I'll, you know,
Yeah.
do this tour. And, I wasn't part of those circles, but it certainly is a keen memory for me.
Hmm. That's valid, and I can relate to timing the swim meet and all the activities that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But again, thank you so much. I hope all the listeners took a lot of notes out of this conversation, and you can listen to this if you are listening to this on Spotify. You can also reach out to listen to this basically on YouTube and all the other streaming platforms. Also, I would say if Haley is comfortable, you can Haley, do you want to give them your email, or like they can reach out to you somewhere, anywhere? Yeah.
LinkedIn's great.
Awesome, awesome. So, guys, and everybody who is listening, you know who to reach out to if you're interested in edge computing, edge or cloud computing, or anything in general. So, thank you so much.